Hey, coin collectors and treasure hunters. Welcome back to your channel. Today we're diving into the history, design, and value of the 1969 1-cent coin from the United States, better known as the Lincoln cent. Let's start with a little background. The Lincoln cent was first minted in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The design, featuring Lincoln's portrait, was the first time a U.S. president was honored on a circulating U.S. coin. The reverse, featuring the Lincoln Memorial, was introduced in 1959 for the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and it continued through the 1960s, including our focus year 1969. The 1969 Lincoln 69 Lincoln cent keeps the iconic design by Victor David Brenner. On the obverse, we have Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" at the top, "Liberty" to his left, and the date, 1969, on the right. Some of these coins may also have a mint mark just below the date, indicating where they were struck. On the reverse, we see the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparro. Above it is the phrase "United States of America" with "E pluribus unum" below that and 1 cent at the bottom. The 1969 cent was minted at 3 different U.S. mint struck in Philadelphia. Coins with a D mint mark were made in Denver, and those with an S were minted in San Francisco. But here's where things get interesting. One of the rarest Lincoln cents ever, the 1969 S doubled die obverse, comes from San Francisco. This variety has doubling on the date, the word "Liberty," and "In God We Trust." While it's extremely rare, it's worth knowing about because it could fetch thousands of dollars if found in circulated condition. 1969 was part of the era when 1-cent coins were made primarily from bronze, which is 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Each coin weighs about 3.11 grams, and this copper content can add a slight premium to the coin's value, especially if copper prices rise in the future. So, what's the value of a 1969 1-cent coin? In circulated condition, most 1969 Lincoln cents are worth face value or 1 cent. However, some collectors may pay a little more, especially for coins in better condition or with unusual toning or marks. Circulated examples are typically worth around 1 cent. In uncirculated or high-grade circulated conditions, they may bring in 10 to 30 cents, similar to Philadelphia minted coins. Circulated 1969 D cents are worth about face value. However, high-grade examples may fetch between 10 and 30 cents as well. Circulated examples are also worth around 1 cent. But if you come across a 1969 S in pristine condition, you might see values between 20 and 50 cents. Now, let's get back to that rare gem we mentioned, the 1969 S doubled die obverse. If you're lucky enough to find one, it could be worth thousands of dollars, even in circulated condition. Due to the distinct doubling on the date and letters, this variety is one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents. Certified examples have sold for anywhere between $10,000 to over $100,000, depending on the coin's condition and authenticity. If you think you've found one, definitely have it authenticated by a professional. So, if you're coin roll hunting or checking your pocket change, keep an eye out for that 1969 S mint mark and check for doubling. Even though most 1969 cents in circulation today are worth face value, finding a high-grade example or a rare error could be a big. First, let's talk about the design. If you've ever looked closely at a penny from 1980, you'll notice it's part of the famous Lincoln cent series. This series features President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse or head side, which was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate Lincoln's 100th birthday. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of Lady Liberty. On the reverse, we see the iconic Lincoln Memorial, which was added in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can actually spot Lincoln's statue inside the memorial on the coin. A very tiny detail that's easy to miss. Now, let's talk about the materials. In 1980, the penny was still made from 95% copper, with the remaining 5% being a mix of zinc and tin. This composition actually gave the penny a much heavier feel compared to modern ones. Interestingly, pennies were primarily copper from the time of their creation until 1982. Why the change? The rising cost of copper. By the early 1980s, producing pennies was becoming more expensive than their actual face value. In 1980, copper prices were on the rise, putting pressure on the U.S. 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But not all of these mints produced. Let's talk about where these coins were made. The U.S. Mint produced the 1980 pennies in the same types of coins. And then we have the San Francisco Mint, which produced a limited number of proof pennies for collectors. These proof coins have an S mark and a mirror-like finish that really makes them stand out. These proof coins were only made in San Francisco and were sold as part of special sets. So if you come across a 1980 penny with an S mark, hold on to it, it's a collector's item. In 1980, pennies were being circulated in huge quantities. In fact, the U.S. Mint produced over 7 billion pennies that year. Pennies are the most widely produced coins in American history because they play such a fundamental role in everyday transactions. So, if you've ever wondered why you see so many pennies from this era, that's why. They were everywhere. Now for some fun facts. Did you know that pennies have some of the most interesting quirks of all U.S. coins? For example, some 1980 pennies show signs of minor errors from the minting process. These errors can include off-center strikes, die cracks, and even double die varieties. Coin collectors love finding these little imperfections because they make the coin unique and can sometimes increase its value. So next time you come across a 1980 penny, take a closer look. You might have a hidden treasure in your pocket. So what's the value of a 1980 penny today? For most circulated coins, the answer is straightforward. They're worth 1 cent, just like they were in 1980. However, for uncirculated or high-grade proof coins from San Francisco, the value can range from a few dollars to more for coins in top condition. Also, as copper continues to become more valuable. Some coin enthusiasts hold on to these older pennies as a copper investment. While it's currently illegal to melt pennies for their metal, who knows what the future holds for these little coin. And that's a wrap on the story of the 1980 US penny. This tiny coin might not seem like much, but it's a piece of history and a reminder of the economic and cultural shifts of the 1984 1-cent coin, also known as the Lincoln penny. This iconic coin has been around for over a century, but each year tells a unique story. In this video, we'll break down the design, historical context, and little-known details about the 1984 Lincoln penny. So let's get started. To begin with, let's take a look at the coin's design. The Lincoln cent has featured the profile of President Abraham Lincoln on its obverse or front side since 1909, when it was introduced to celebrate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. The design was crafted by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained largely unchanged on the obverse side ever since. Now, on the reverse side, we see the Lincoln Memorial, a feature added in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The reverse was designed by Frank Gasparro, who incorporated the Lincoln Memorial into the design. If you look closely, you'll notice a tiny image of Lincoln himself sitting inside the memorial. This subtle detail connects the obverse and reverse sides, giving a unique depth to the coin. So, why is the 1984 penny unique in terms of its historical context? Well, the 1980s were a time of economic challenges and changes in the United States. Inflation rates were high, and the U.S. Mint was focused on cost efficiency. At the time, the penny was no longer made of the copper that had been used in earlier decades. Since 1982, pennies were minted with a zinc core and a thin copper coating. The 1984 penny followed this standard. Specifically, the 1984 penny was made of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. This shift helped the mint reduce production costs, as copper prices had become volatile. But the change also led to some technical issues, with these pennies being more prone to wear and damage over time compared to their all-copper predecessors. One interesting fact about the 1984 penny is that there are some notable error coins and varieties that collectors look for. The most famous is the 1984 doubled ear variety. On some pennies from this year, Lincoln's earlobe appears to have been struck twice, giving it a doubled effect. These error coins can be worth a fair amount more than face value, especially in high grades. If you're a collector, finding one of these rare varieties could be quite exciting. Prices can range from a few dollars to hundreds, depending on the coin's condition. In terms of circulation, the U.S. Mint produced a massive number of these coins in 1984. Approximately 8 billion pennies were struck that year between the Philadelphia and Denver mints. That's quite a few pennies. This high mintage reflects the ongoing demand for pennies in everyday transactions during the 1980s. Since 1984 pennies were minted in such large quantities, they're still fairly easy to find. But if you're looking to collect, pay attention to the coin's grade. Higher grade coins, especially those in mint state MS condition, can carry a premium for collectors. Coins in near perfect condition are valued by collectors and can sell for more than the typical circulated penny. However, most 1984 pennies, especially in circulated condition, hold only face value due to their abundance. Today, the penny remains a topic of debate in the U.S. Some argue it's time to phase out the penny due to its low purchasing power and production cost, while others see it as a valuable piece of American history. For now, the Lincoln penny and the 1984 issue continues to circulate, reminding us of the past while sparking conversations about the future of U.S. currency. The 1-cent coin is one of the most familiar and widely circulated coins in the United States. It's been around for over 150 years, and in 1992, it continued its journey as part of the nation's day-to-day currency. Let's start with the coin's design. The 1992 penny featured the obverse front design of Abraham Lincoln, a design that had been in place since 1909, the first year the penny featured the likeness of the 16th President of the United States. This was also the year of the penny's centennial design change, marking 100 years of Lincoln on the coin. Now, in 1992, we were looking at a coin with a very familiar design. On the obverse, we have Lincoln's portrait by Victor David Brenner. This is the same portrait that has graced the penny for over a century, and it was still widely loved for its detailed and realistic rendering of Lincoln. Above Lincoln's head, you'll notice the inscription Liberty, a reminder of the values the U.S. stands for. To the right, you'll see the date, 1992 in this case, and under Lincoln's bust, the words "In God We Trust." On the reverse, you'll find the iconic wheat ears, a design that had been used since 1909 and continued until 1958. But in 1992, the reverse of the penny was something different. His strength and protection of the nation. The words "E pluribus unum," which means out of many, one, are inscribed across the top, and the coin's denomination 1 cent is at the bottom. It's a powerful image of unity and national identity. By 1992, the penny was made of 97.5% zinc with a 2.5% copper plating. This composition has remained largely unchanged, although the U.S. Mint has occasionally considered alternatives due to the increasing cost of copper. In the 1990s, the price of copper began rising, which led to discussions about the future of the penny. By 1992, it was already more expensive to make the coin than its face value, and in subsequent years, the U.S. government would continue to look into ways to reduce the costs of minting pennies. The penny has always been a key player in the circulation of U.S. currency, and in 1992, it continued to be minted in large numbers, with millions of pennies being produced by the U.S. Mint for daily transactions. Despite being one of the smallest denominations in the U.S. currency system, the penny still plays a huge role in American life. By 1992, the penny was still one of the most widely circulated coins in the U.S. People used it everywhere in the grocery store, at vending. Phased out due to its rising cost of production and low purchasing power. So, what's the legacy of the 1992 penny? Well, the penny hasn't disappeared, not yet at least. Although it's no longer as heavily used as it once was, it remains an enduring symbol of American coinage. Some collectors still focus on specific years and varieties of pennies. And for those of us who love history, the 1992 penny offers a glimpse into a turning point in U.S. coinage, as it marks a time when the penny was still widely used but was beginning to show signs of its decline in everyday transactions. Here are a few quick facts about the 1992 penny that you might not know. The 1992 penny had a mintage of over 7 billion coins, making it one of the most produced pennies of the decade. In 1992, the U.S. Mint still struck pennies at all of its main mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Despite being worth only 1 cent, the production cost of the penny was already exceeding its face value by the early 90s. So, that's a look back at the 1992 U.S. penny, a small coin with a big history. Whether you love it or hate it, the penny has been an essential part of American currency for generations, and even though its future remains uncertain, we can always. 1991 U.S. 1 cent coin, better known as the penny. Stick around because we'll be exploring its design, significance, and circulation history. Let's get started. Before we zoom in on the 1991 penny, let's quickly look at the U.S. 1 cent coin in general. First issued in 1793, the penny is one of the longest-lasting coins in the history of the United States. Over the years, its design and composition have evolved, but its status as a symbol of American currency has remained intact. The penny is small, but it holds a big place in U.S. history. From its early days, it's been a reflection of key moments in the country's growth, and its design has undergone some significant changes over time. Now, let's talk about the design of the 1991 1 cent coin. In 1959, the U.S. Mint switched from the wheat ears design to a depiction of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. This iconic design, created by artist Frank Gasparo, remained until 2008 when it was replaced by the shield reverse we see today. In 1991, the penny was still using the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which had been in circulation for over 30 years. Depictions of any American president on U.S. currency. Now, let's jump into the circulation history of the 1991 penny. By 1991, the penny was already a fixture in everyday life in the United States. In fact, it's estimated that the U.S. Mint produced more than 7 billion pennies that year alone. Despite its small value, the penny was used in transactions all over the country. But by the early 90s, there were already discussions about the penny's future, as it costs more to produce than it's worth. In fact, each penny produced in 1991 cost the U.S. government about 14 cents to make. But why was the penny still being minted? By the time the 1991 penny came into circulation, there had been decades of debate about the penny's usefulness. In the 80s and early 90s, inflation was rising, and many people began questioning whether the penny still made sense as part of the currency system. Lawmakers even held hearings to discuss the idea of eliminating the penny entirely. Some argued that it was an outdated coin, unnecessary in a world where inflation had reduced its purchasing power to almost nothing. But others pushed back, saying that the penny was deeply rooted in American history and culture and place in our hearts. Its design, its time in circulation, and the debates about its value all remind us of how coins are more than just pieces of metal. They tell the story of a nation. Thanks for joining me today as we explored the history and circulation of the 1991 US 1-cent coin. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a new episode. And leave a comment down below. What do you think about the future of the penny? Should we keep it or let it go?